By 1994, Afghanistan has been at war for more than 15 years. The Soviet-Afghan War ended with Soviet withdrawal in 1989, but then the Afghan Civil War enters a new phase. The Islamist mujahadeen factions that had defeated the Soviets are divided by religious and ethnic rivalries and fight in a kaleidoscope of back-and-forth campaigns, defections, and civilian suffering. Foreign countries send arms and money to their preferred groups, including Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and the United States. There is a nominal government under President Burhanuddin Rabbani in Kabul, but it's weak and bankrupt. His defense minister is Ahmad Massoud, and their armed forces are mostly ethnic Tajiks, but they do have non-Tajik allies. They also have links to the US. More radical is the faction of Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, an ethnic Pashtun supported by Pakistan's intelligence service, the ISI. The CIA's support for mujahideen mostly goes through the ISI, though Washington has greatly reduced its role in the conflict. Another radical group, supported by Saudi Arabia, is led by Abdul Rab Rasul Sayaf. There's an ethnic Uzbek group under Abdul Rashid Dostum, and a minority Hazara Shia faction, Wahdat, supported by Iran. Most of the mujahideen factions agreed to work together in a shura, or traditional council, but this doesn't work in practice. Various factions even control different parts of the capital. And in the midst of the chaos, a new faction that will change the course of the war rises to prominence in 1994, the Taliban. In lawless southern Afghanistan, a group emerges calling themselves the Islamic Movement of Taliban, the Pashtun word for students. Their radical ideology is based on an extreme form of Deobandism, a school of thought from 19th century British India that originally emphasized education to unite Muslims. Deobandism has long been popular in Pakistan and is associated with the Pakistani Islamist JUI party. The movement spread to Afghanistan from 1979, mostly through madrasas, or religious schools, funded by Saudi Arabia for Afghan refugees in Pakistan. The mullahs at these schools combine elements of Deobandism, Pashtun tribal code, and strict Saudi Wahhabi Islam. This makes the Taliban much more extreme than other Deobandists in the questions of restrictions on women, opposing Shia Islam, and especially anti-modernism. Pakistani writer Ahmed Rashid describes the origins of many Taliban. These boys were from a generation that had never seen their country at peace. They had no memories of their tribes, their elders, their neighbors, nor the complex ethnic mix of peoples that often made up their villages and their homeland. They were literally orphans of the war, the rootless and the restless, the jobless and the economically deprived, with little self-knowledge. They admired war because it was the only occupation they could possibly adapt to. Their simple belief in a messianic, Puritan Islam, which had been drummed into them by simple village mullahs, was the only prop they could hold on to and which gave their lives some meaning. The refugee camp madrasas have created a new form of radicalism, one not before seen in Afghan villages and tribal life. Afghan rural society, while already very conservative, previously also had a strong tradition of pragmatism and moderation. The Taliban and their leader, Mullah Omar, claim they want to restore order, or even bring back the king, but not to take power themselves. This message appeals to villagers tired of chaos, and to local Pashtun leaders who also support the Taliban since they're fighting the Tajik-dominated Rabbani government. The influential Karzai family from Kandahar, descendants of King Durrani, also back them, including future President Hamid Karzai. They were connected to the madrasas in Quetta and Peshawar, and were my friends from the jihad against the Soviets. They came to me in May 1994 saying, "Hamed, we must do something about the situation in Kandahar. It's unbearable." I had no reservations about helping them. I had a lot of money and weapons left over from the jihad. I also helped them with political legitimacy. By 1994, the Taliban have become a regional player in southern Afghanistan, but it's Pakistani support that lets them go on the offensive. New Pakistani Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto wants to develop trade routes through Afghanistan. Bhutto, her coalition partner JUI party, and Interior Minister Nasirullah Babar see the Taliban as better partners than Hekmatyar in order to get control of Afghanistan. Pakistan's goal is for the Taliban to unite the country under its strict interpretation of Islam and govern in alignment with Pakistan. This alliance soon bears fruit. The ISI let the Taliban capture a huge stash of heavy weapons from Hekmatyar in October 1994. After an ISI-orchestrated operation, the Taliban capture Kandahar city and the airport, and soon they control the roads and tax traffic for revenue. By December, Taliban numbers grow to 12,000, mostly Afghan Pashtuns, but including many Pakistanis, leading some historians to call late 1994 the start of Pakistan's creeping invasion of Afghanistan. The Taliban army will eventually number over 30,000, and they can quickly expand by temporarily recruiting reinforcements from madrasas, including in Pakistan. The men are volunteers at first, but leadership will later impose conscription, though one can pay to avoid service, leaving the rank and file mostly poor and badly trained. Units vary in size from a few dozen to several hundred, and are usually light and mobile, mounted on modified pickup trucks. Some have artillery, armored vehicles, or even aircraft, mostly operated by Pakistani and former Afghan government soldiers. This army goes on the offensive in January 1995. They quickly capture several towns and crush former Pakistani favorite Hekmatyar, who flees. Meanwhile, Massoud's government-aligned forces push the Shia Wahdat faction out of Kabul, so Wahdat cuts a deal with the Taliban, but this soon fails when the Wahdat leader is killed. Massoud then attacks the Taliban and their allies, including Massoud's former ally Dostum, the ethnic Uzbek. Massoud is now in full control of the capital, but the Taliban have made gains in the west against his Tajik ally Ismail Khan. He sends veteran Tajik troops and air power to defend Shindan and Herat, halting Taliban assaults and inflicting heavy losses. The Taliban suffer 3,000 casualties and leave many wounded to die as they have no medical services. Taliban Saleh Mohammed is among the wounded. We have never seen such an inhospitable environment. Every day we're bombed 10 to 15 times. There's no food or water, and my friends have died of thirst. We lost communication with our commanders, and we don't know where our other troops are. We ran out of ammunition. It was a great misery. By May 1995, government forces control the 6 provinces around Kabul in the north, government ally Ismail Khan 3 provinces in the west, and the Taliban 8 provinces in the south. But the Taliban regroup. Pakistani intel helps them broker a new deal with Dostum, whose technicians repair combat aircraft at Kandahar. These planes help the Taliban attack again in the west and defeat Ismail Khan, who flees to Iran to regroup. As the fighting rages across the country and the Taliban conquer more provinces, the nominal government in Kabul struggles. The Rabbani government fails to stabilize the economy or provide basic services, as Massoud's intelligence chief Amrullah Saleh recalls. There was no delivery of services. The court system was not working, they were unable to engender a grand vision for a solution in Afghanistan, they'd run out of ideas. What was keeping Kabul as Kabul was the military prowess of Massoud, and it was running thin and being peeled off day by day. But for the civilian population, there was nothing. Inflation was running at 1,000%. Literally, we were printing money to keep filling the pockets of the people. And the economy was basically 2 items: war and criminality. The mostly Tajik government also tries and fails to attract prominent Pashtun supporters, partly due to ethnic rivalry. Rabbani and Massoud also approach former allies like Hekmatyar, Dostum, and Wahdat, all of whom now oppose Kabul. The ISI, though, wants to weaken Rabbani, so offers these same factions an alliance with the Taliban, but the Taliban themselves refuse. Given the rising Taliban threat, Hekmatyar and Dostum eventually agree to ally again with government forces. Diplomatically, things are little better. The UN Peace Initiative fails in summer 1995 when its head questions the legitimacy of the government. Russia's President Yeltsin stopped aid to the Najibullah regime, but now sends supplies to the Rabbani government, whose mujahadeen had previously fought the Soviet army, because Moscow worries about the Taliban. Iran and India support Kabul for the same reason. Rabbani desperately reaches out for other international allies, including Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. Meanwhile, the CIA winds down its operations in Afghanistan, stopping them in 1996. The Clinton administration doesn't see the country as a priority, and Saudi and Pakistani diplomats falsely tell the US that they're not supporting the Taliban, or that the Taliban will become more moderate. Some US diplomats talk of a Taliban-controlled Afghanistan as a stable trade route to Central Asia, while others warn the Taliban are a danger. Some critics have accused the Clinton administration of enabling the future Taliban takeover, but the more likely explanation is that it simply doesn't pay enough attention and believes Pakistan's assurances. As Kabul fails to build a functioning state and international support decreases, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia continue to support the Taliban with everything they need to fight on. In March 1996, Mullah Omar, now calling himself the Commander of the Faithful, declares the Emirate of Afghanistan. Just a year earlier, the Taliban insisted they did not want power, but now they're a secretive, centralized organization making war for control of the country.
The
Taliban government is a real Islamic government, and we follow and obey all that the Commander of the Faithful says to us. We will support anyone who follows him and will oppose his enemies.
Using Saudi money, they bribe or defeat the remaining mujahadeen between Kandahar and Kabul, as well as in Jalalabad. Their guns shell Kabul from nearby positions, as Pakistani writer Ahmed Rashid reports. I stood on a rain-swept hill with Massoud's troops outside Kabul and watched through binoculars as dozens of Taliban in pickups tried to punch through Massoud's lines along a road in the valley below, under the cover of a Taliban artillery barrage. In return, Massoud's Russian-made D-30 howitzers pounded the hidden Taliban artillery. The thud of shells shook the mountains, deafening the ears and making me sway at the knees. The gunners were stone deaf due to the constant shelling and the lack of ear protectors. Government forces protecting Kabul are overstretched, and the Taliban cut through from the south and east, shocking government commanders when their tanks appear at the airport. I climbed the control tower and I saw the eastern edge of the runway in flames. Later, I looked to the east and I saw 2 tanks coming towards us. I thought these were our tanks coming. I wanted to stay a bit and say hello, so they may recognize me. But they fired at me, and I realized I was waiting for the wrong tanks. Massoud fears he could be surrounded, and pulls his forces back to his old stronghold in the Panjshir Valley. On September 27, 1996, the Taliban gained control of Kabul. Pakistan allows Taliban supporters to cross the border and join the fight, which helps the Taliban capture 3 more provinces by September. They also threaten Bagram Air Base and cut off Massoud's supplies from abroad. The victorious Taliban view Kabul as a sinful city and impose harsh rule. Najibullah had been hiding in the UN compound, and they kill him and string up his mutilated body. They drastically restrict the rights of women, confining them to their homes unless accompanied by a male relative. They also forcibly marry young girls to Taliban fighters and sell some women into sexual slavery. Religious police patrol the city to enforce bans on music, play, certain haircuts, and other new rules. Punishments range from lashes to amputation to death. There's international outcry over the treatment of women in particular, but the Taliban don't understand it. Let us state what sort of education the UN wants. This is a big infidel policy which gives such obscene freedom to women, which would lead to adultery and herald the destruction of Islam. In any Islamic country where adultery becomes common, that country is destroyed and enters the domination of the infidels, because their men become like women, and women cannot defend themselves. The Holy Quran cannot adjust itself to other people's requirements. People should adjust themselves to the requirements of the Holy Quran. The already poor health and education systems collapse, as does the rest of the economy. A former surgeon from Kabul describes her new life.
I can't go to my job, I can't help my people because they said that the women must sit in their houses and they can't go outside. It's very bad for us. I'm very sorry and I want to leave this country.
50,000 war widows in the city are among the most desperate. Baker Bibi Zora describes the catastrophe. Day by day, the situation is worsening. We've become beggars dependent on the UN to survive. It is not the Afghan way. Women are exhausted, depressed, and devastated. We're just waiting for peace, praying for peace every minute of the day. So by fall 1996, the Taliban control Kabul and most of the country, and their strength is growing. The Taliban's victories bring more resources and more recruits. The remaining anti-Taliban forces now come together to form the Northern Alliance, which includes Masoud's Tajiks, Dostum's Uzbeks, the Shia Wahdat group, and Saif's fighters. Since the Taliban outgunned the alliance, Masoud hopes to wear them down like he did with the Soviets a decade earlier. For the Taliban, a compromise with Masoud is out of the question.
We would like to throw him out. So ceasefire with him, sitting with him, and putting him in future government, it means we are giving him chance that he should destroy further this country. So he's the killer, he's the culprit, he's destroyed this country.
After a late 1996 Taliban offensive in Bardis province, they attacked Masoud north of Kabul in early 1997. They gained some ground and ethnically cleansed the Tajik population. Then they move against Dostum, who hasn't paid his troops in months and who's lost several commanders to defections to the Taliban. When the fighting reaches Mazar-i-Sharif, Dostum flees to Turkey. One of his generals who defects also hands over fellow commander Ismail Khan. Afghanistan's neighbors fear the surging Taliban might try to spread an Islamist revolution across the border. Russia sends troops to the Afghan-Uzbek and Afghan-Tajik borders, which the two countries close. Tajikistan's civil war even comes to an end as the two sides sign a peace deal. Nearly all the countries in the region are furious with Pakistan for its support of the Taliban. Taliban, meanwhile, complain about Russian and Iranian support for the Northern Alliance and Iranian flights of arms into Mazar-i-Sharif, where minority ethnic Hazara militias take up the fight after Dostum's defeat. The Hazara eliminate Taliban units in Mazar-i-Sharif, and ethnic Uzbek forces retake 4 northern provinces. Masoud also advances, cutting off some retreating Taliban and recapturing some towns. Wahdat also makes progress. In 10 weeks of fighting between May and June, the Taliban lose nearly 7,000 casualties. The troops of the Northern Alliance often show no mercy, executing thousands of prisoners by firing squad or by throwing them into wells. At night, when it was quiet and dark, we took about 150 Taliban prisoners, blindfolded them, tied their hands behind their backs, and drove them in truck containers out to the desert. We lined them up, 10 at a time, in front of holes in the ground, and opened fire. It took about 6 nights. In response, the Taliban bring in thousands of madrasa students as reinforcements and try to recruit more Pashtuns. But by now, many villagers oppose the Taliban, as one village elder explains. The Taliban had promised peace. Instead, they've given us nothing but war. The fighting continues to sway back and forth into 1997. Isolated Taliban manage to take Kunduz, and Masoud's forces approach Kabul. Dostum returns from Turkey and leads a renewed defense near Mazar-i-Sharif. As the Taliban retreat, they massacre Hazaras in places like Qazil Abid. The Taliban swept through this village like a storm. They killed about 70 people. Some had their throats slit, while others were skinned alive. There are tensions within anti-Taliban forces as well. Hazaras in Mazar-i-Sharif clash with Uzbeks and chase Dostum out. So by the end of 1997, the Taliban still have the upper hand in the south, but the Northern Alliance still controls much of the north. 1998 sees international terrorism cause renewed US focus on the conflict. Both the Taliban and Northern Alliance are exhausted, but still enjoy some foreign support. Russia and Iran have provided limited help to the Northern Alliance, while Pakistan and Saudi Arabia still back the Taliban. The US, though, plays very little direct role at this stage. UN Secretary General Kofi Annan explains why peace talks are stalled. The continued support by these outside forces, combined with the apathy of others not directly involved, is rendering diplomatic initiatives almost irrelevant. The Afghan leaders refuse to rise above their factional interests and start working together for national reconciliation. Too many groups in Afghanistan, warlords, terrorists, drug dealers, and others, appear to have too much to gain from war and too much to lose from peace. Massoud, though, concludes that no foreign power will give the Northern Alliance the weapons it needs to fully defeat the Taliban. The Taliban have suffered losses but are better equipped and recapture Mazar-e-Sharif with ISI officers alongside them. They take their revenge against groups who resisted them previously, as one survivor recalls. They were shooting without warning at everybody who happened to be on the street, without discriminating between men, women, and children. Soon, the streets were covered with dead bodies and blood. People were shot 3 times on the spot, 1 bullet in the head, 1 in the chest, and 1 in the testicles. Those who survived buried their dead in their gardens. Women were raped. Taliban Mullah Niazi, the new governor of Mazar-e-Sharif, announces they intend to kill or expel all of the mostly Shia Hazaras. By the late summer, about 1 million Hazaras in Taliban-controlled territory begin to starve. Civilians in Taliban-controlled Kabul also starve after the Taliban shut down the NGOs that have been feeding 600,000 people. Taliban Planning Minister Qari Din Mohammed explains. We Muslims believe God the Almighty will feed everybody, one way or another. If the foreign NGOs leave, then it's their decision. We have not expelled them. More Taliban victories follow, including along the Uzbek border, in Takhar province, Bamiyan, and towards the Panjshir Valley. Baghdad no longer holds any large towns, and Massoud retreats to the north. As the Taliban make progress on the battlefield in the late 90s, Osama bin Laden's strength also grows. In 1996, he returns to Afghanistan after Saudi Arabia strips him of his citizenship. Mullah Omar invites him to set up terrorist training camps, which soon house some 3,000 Arab and non-Afghan volunteers. Bin Laden's goal is international terrorist jihad against the presence of US troops in Saudi Arabia. The CIA knows he's in the country and has kept in contact with Massoud in the hopes that the anti-Taliban forces will capture or kill bin Laden. Massoud, though, feels the US isn't taking the threat seriously enough, as they offer him little in the way of weapons or money to support such an operation. Islamic terrorism isn't new. In 1993, a Pakistani killed 2 CIA officers in Virginia and fled to Afghanistan, and soon after a group of Islamists carried out the truck bombing of the World Trade Center. But bin Laden's al-Qaeda group is now bigger and more organized, killing 220 with truck bombs at the US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in August 1998. Washington asks the Taliban to give up bin Laden, but Mullah Omar refuses. The Clinton administration responds with Tomahawk missile attacks on al-Qaeda training camps in Afghanistan, killing 34. But bin Laden survives. Mullah Omar condemns the strikes. If the attack on Afghanistan is Clinton's personal decision, then he has done it to divert the world and the American people's attention from that shameful White House affair that has proved Clinton is a liar and a man devoid of decency and honor. America itself is the biggest terrorist in the world. By the turn of the millennium, Afghanistan has been mired in war for over 20 years. The Taliban control most of the country, but their agreement to host al-Qaeda gets the US involved again, and it's not clear just what the Americans will do now. 1999 begins with more talks under UN leadership, but they again fail. Pakistan promises to stop a planned Taliban offensive, but it goes ahead anyway. They make some progress towards Massoud's last stronghold before his forces push them back. During the brief Taliban occupation of these areas, they apply scorched earth tactics and destroy much of the remaining agricultural infrastructure, causing 200,000 civilians to flee. The next year, though, the Taliban successfully pushed Massoud from his stronghold of Talogan after a month of bitter fighting and a siege. Meanwhile, the Taliban campaign against internal opposition brings results. They purge their ranks of non-Pashtun Afghans, but keep the more than 1/3 of their forces who are foreign, mostly from Pakistan and Uzbekistan. Taliban also kill prominent Pashtun Abdul Karzai, the Khan of the Popolzai Pashtun tribe. His son Hamid inherits his title and vows to resist the Taliban. The US is now so worried about Al-Qaeda and the Taliban that they even work with Iran behind the scenes to prevent a total Taliban victory. After Al-Qaeda attacks the warship USS Cole in 2000, Washington also imposes sanctions on the Taliban regime. Pakistan helps them evade them. By 2001, Afghanistan is in a state of chaos and ruin, even more than it was when the Soviets withdrew in 1989. The Taliban control most of the country, but the people suffer from hunger, repression, and violence. Tribal leaders complain, and there's a large anti-Taliban protest in Røste. Their emirate is nearly entirely dependent on money from Pakistan and bin Laden, as well as opium sales, though they banned the sale of opium in 2001. The Taliban's not quite total victory in the Afghan civil war wouldn't have been possible without Saudi and Pakistani support. But Islamabad's goals of creating strategic depth against India, economically benefiting from a friendly Afghanistan, and having a training ground for jihadists against India have not panned out. In fact, involvement in the Afghan civil war has radicalized many Pakistanis and made the country more unstable. President Pervez Musharraf, who came to power in a recent coup, faces opposition to the dead-end policy that he's inherited. But as one Pakistani diplomat explains, it's hard to see a way out. We find practical reasons to continue with policies that we know are never going to deliver, and the eventual costs of which we also know will be overwhelming. Thus, we are condemned to ride a tiger. The US is equally lost. It starts to give some support to Massoud, but not enough for him to turn the tide of the war. Clinton does warn the incoming Bush administration about Al-Qaeda and international terrorism, but no one in America expects what comes next and what it will mean for Afghanistan. During the Taliban's capture of Mazar-i-Sharif, they also occupied Kala-i-Jangi fortress. It had previously been used by Dostum and the Soviets. During the 2001 invasion of Afghanistan, the fort was at the center of a multi-day battle between the Taliban and US and British Special Forces and Northern Alliance forces. To learn more about the Battle of Kala-i-Jangi, check out our series History's Most Daring Raids. And where can you watch History's Most Daring Raids? On Nebula, a streaming service we're building with other creators where you don't need to sift through a deluge of AI slop. Nebula is made and curated by humans, and it's available in 4K resolution on your browser, on your smartphone, smart TV, or streaming box like Apple TV or Roku. And that's not all. On Nebula, you can also watch all our regular videos ad-free and earlier than on YouTube. If you go to nebula.tv/realtimehistory, you can sign up for just $30 for an entire year. Right now, you can also get the Nebula Lifetime membership. Pay once and get access to everything Nebula has to offer for as long as you and Nebula exist. If you go to nebula.tv/realtimehistory, you can save $200 on the regular price. The Lifetime membership allows us to invest in more original content and improve the platform for everyone. 1/3 of your Lifetime membership will also support us at Real-Time History directly. To learn more about the war for Afghanistan, check out our previous videos. As usual, you can find all the sources for this video in the description below. If you're watching this video on Patreon or Nebula, thank you so much for the support. We couldn't do it without you. I'm Jesse Alexander, and this is a production of Real-Time History, the only history channel that also doesn't want to ride a tiger.